What is up, gamers? Ooh, excuse me, I just ate dinner. But anyways, hey everyone, it's me again. Before we get this video started, I want you guys to subscribe to me right up here. This is how many of you aren't subscribed. I've already talked to you about this enough, about how much I don't like that statistic. But anyways, we're gonna get to the real meat and potatoes immediately. And we're going to talk about an analog horror series, which hasn't been talked about yet, and as of recording this, is sitting at around 500 subscribers and like 10 to 5 comments in each video. So I thought it'd be a great time to cover this and use my monkey brain to interpret what little I can from this analog horror little series. So yeah, I'm gonna try to dissect it and tell you guys as much information as I possibly can, because I'm notoriously bad at interpreting analog horror. But we're gonna try my best because there's nobody else that'll do it. So let's get straight to it. All right, so this is gonna be another Zoombini talking in front of the camera video. So Where Are You Now is a analog horror series created by the channel of the same name, which is about, guess what it's about? Guess what it's about? Bet you can't. I'm waiting. It's about Thomas the Tank Engine, doofus. But yeah, that's what it's about. Like I said earlier, it's sitting at like 550 subscribers, less than 1,000 right now. So no one else has really covered it. I've heard talk about it in a couple different places, but nothing like super substantial where it's like Wendigoon made a video on it. So I thought I'd beat him to the punch and talk about it. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with the first video called Trailer. The video starts off with a phone call from some random man who is yet to be named. Maybe we'll figure out who he is soon. With the phone call directed towards the director of Thomas, David Mitton, he calls and is like, "Hey, Mr. Mitton, I want to retract the application I gave for the job, and I want you to be 100% sure with who you're working with." And then we get a cut, or not really a cut, but a fade into this man, whoever he is right there. And the phone call cuts out and the video cuts out because it's like 30 seconds long. So we get a pretty much a basic premise there from what I can interpret. Some guy applied to the Thomas and Friends show to work on it, and then after finding out some nefarious dude works on that project as well, he talks to the director and is like, "Hey, I want you to be 100% sure with who you're working with because this guy is somehow terrible." So we'll probably figure that out in the next coming videos. So I think next we'll cover the second video, Trailer 2. Now, Trailer 2 isn't like the first one where there's not a dude talking, but it does include a few little screenshots from the production of the show, which have been edited. They really, honestly, before I get into like the whole story thing, whoever made this really did a good job of, like editing the props or whoever and making them seem like they're actually real, because some of these have been edited slightly. I don't know. I'm kind of a moron, which you'll pick up from this video, but I know that they edited somehow, and I think they did a pretty good, swell job, But anyways, yeah, we go with a bunch of photos from production of the set with props and stuff, and we get a few little snippets of videos from the future to come. And also, we get this line of text, which I will read out now. This is what I wanted it to be, a simple way of making smiles, but my attempts were overcome by a deeper interest. I now live with the burden, and now it won't go. So obviously, some guy who made the show, we can tell from the text, he wanted it to, just be a simple way of making kids smile and whatnot, but his attempts were overcome by someone with a more nefarious interest. And, obviously, since his little creation was, kind of corrupted, he obviously feels bad about it. Maybe it's not even only his creation. Maybe there's a greater effect here that we're just now hearing about from this video that we haven't really gone into depth with yet. Alright, so now we get to the cryptic bullshit, which is in every single analog horror. That's not being mean or anything, I'm just saying it's kind of hard to decipher. But next video is Intermission, which is really our longest. Thank you, air conditioning, you son. Anyways, we get to our first real long video of the entire series, which is about 7 minutes long. It's called Intermission, and we start off with the sunrise, which has to have some meaning. I'm not quite sure. And then we get this part is what I'm really been thinking about. We get a fade in and fade out of a shed prop, it looks like. Maybe it's a picture, I think it's a prop. And we also get like a fade in of a document which has been blacked out and redacted, but as it zooms into the camera we can see that it was signed by the producer of Thomas & Friends, Britt Allcroft. So that obviously has to be something interesting. And then we get a fade in of this big old wall of text which seems to be some guideline, which may be what was on the document. And it basically reads, which I translated through my big old smart, so smart genius brain. It basically just says, hey, if you ask about another employee, we can't really give up that information to you unless given consent from that employee, or if there's probable cause to give up that information about the employee. So regarding that has to be something suspicious, because why would you need to ask something that's redacted, like something? Why would you need to ask something about that, about an employee of yours or a coworker of yours, that's unless they're doing something nefarious or something evil? So that's obviously not a good sign. And then after this, we cut to the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. That's gross. Get it out of my face. Ew, ew, ew. It introduces itself as the narrator, but we can call it Thomas, apparently. Thomas then starts, or the narrator, as we're going to call him throughout this entire video, he starts rambling on about how we're all ashamed of something and how he's ashamed of his voice. And then after that, after his weird-ass ramblings, we cut to a video from the German Federal Archive, which is really just a bunch of footage of, like, people being smart and stuff like that, and some guy talking over it in what I assume is German, but I can't really tell what language it is at all because it sounds metallic, either that or it's been made to be corrupted. I really wish I spoke German so I could kind of hear what they were saying. Now, the guy, who we'll find out his name later, the guy who's making this video in universe, takes us to a copyright archive, and he goes to Mattel, who owns Thomas, and then he scrolls for a little bit and finds this one that was copyrighted in 2011 from Germany, from the German Federal Archives. But he says that it's not a transfer from archives, and so something has to be going on here. I'm not really sure how it got there if it wasn't transfer, but we'll figure that out, I suppose. Now, our guy, after finding this out, says that 15 pieces of media were logged out permanently from Mattel's archive, and only one could be found. And the video of it is just behind the scenes footage of models, but the guy says that he still feels something suspicious is going on. He still is not quite okay with it. So there's something. If he's worried, then I'm worried. There's got to be something going on here. So a summary of that whole shebang was the owners and creators of Thomas the Tank Engine are clearly trying to hide something and trying to cover something up, but they apparently didn't do a great job of it. And also it establishes a connection with Germany, which will show up later. Don't forget that. And speaking of Germany, our next video is Edward found in Germany, so I'll talk about that right now. But as the video starts out, it gives us more cryptic messaging, which, here, I wrote this down. I'm going to read what it said, just so I, don't forget it. Where there's a sky, there's stars. Where there are stars, there's a hand to grab them. The hand is severed. It has no value. So, what I interpret from that is that, like, if there's a sky, someone's going to reach out for it, reach for your dreams is pretty much what it's saying. But then, boom, their dreams are lost and their hopes are crushed. So that's what I interpret from it. So someone's dreams must have been crushed. And then we get, it flashes pretty quickly, so I had to slow it down a good bit. We get a newspaper article that says hundreds of people were deafened in an incident, and it shows a picture of Edward the Blue Engine, which we all know and love him. And then it also says found buried in the ground, something like that. Something about being buried in the ground. That's not good. That is not good at all, because what did they find buried in the ground? And when it comes to analog horrors, it's never anything good that they find buried in the ground. So it either has to be someone dead or some eldritch horror that made all those people go deaf. So we've got an event here that happened that we have no idea what the cause is to, and we have a hint that someone might have been murdered and found in the ground in Germany. Because speaking of which, Edward is found in Germany, so maybe that title correlates with someone being found dead in the ground in Germany. That's just my theory for it. Okay, so before we move on from this one, I want to let you guys know to make sure if you're doing your own investigation about this, check the descriptions, because it really, because there are some little itty-bitty secrets in there, because in the description of this video, it says that Don Gilliam's family should be compensated for the death of their daughter. I think that's what it says. Somewhere around that. Something about Don Gilliam's family getting compensation for the loss of one of their children. Again, that's not good. Like I said earlier, something being buried in the ground found in Germany. Their daughter, their child is dead. Well, that's not good at all. Okay, so the next video, called Mine Video, is not really anything to speak about. It's more of it's a slideshow of all these models, which I'm pretty sure the guy who made this made himself, because these aren't models from the TV show. And if so, that's really impressive. Either he edited them or like made them himself. That's really cool. I want to tell like, good job on that, man. Like, really I wish I was that talented. But anyways, another piece of information we get from this video is that someone called Mine Wagner, which is another name. You know, names are important. So we have Don Gilliam and Mine Wagner, two people that could possibly be important in the next future. Make sure you write that down, guys, because, you know, I'm going to make sure I remember too. But anyways, we're going to get to another long video here. Immediately starts with a man sitting curled up in his bed, disheveled. He's looking off into space, terrified at this silhouette standing right in front of his bed. And then it cuts to some sort of creature. And then it starts the video. Okay, first off, you can't just do that, okay? You can't just do that. That's scary. Don't do that to me. Who are you? What is this thing? Okay, so after pondering what in the hell that creature was, we get introduced to the guy, or we learn the guy's name. Hi, Seth. Hi, buddy. Anyways, after that, we get a whole little clip of like Thomas the Tank Engine, which I forgot this entire series was about while I was making this, honestly. And then the narrator graces us with his presence again. Ew. The way he shows up, like Thomas wears his face, the narrator's face, like a skin, like just, I don't know how to describe it, but it looks like just someone else wearing someone else's face. You know what I'm saying? And then he asks Birdie, "Do you reckon everything is in vain, Birdie?" The narrator then cuts off the Thomas episode, which I was watching, by the way, douchebag. And I love this guy. I love this character. He's like, he's frightening. I like him. He's a cool guy. And so then after the narrator's done talking, we cut to a little thing about how the models were produced and how they sucked completely when they were being made, which set back production a while and angered a lot of employees, which we can see from two tape recordings taken from disgruntled employees. One, which he's yelling and, you know, being all mad and stuff, from a redacted employee who's been blacklisted from the company, apparently. And the other one from Mine Wagner, who we find out is who was or is, I don't know if he's still around. He was a technical consultant. He did stuff with models, is what I'm trying to say. So that's pretty cool. I feel like such a cool detective. We're piecing together that Mine Wagner worked on the show, and that's how he got those photos. But does he have connection to Don Gilliam, and does he also have connection to whoever got found in the ground in Germany? But anyways, we time skip to 2004, which the fictional company that owned Thomas in this universe, Child's First Step, apparently declared bankruptcy, and then Mattel bought them that same year, and then sent two guys to go investigate their warehouse facility to make sure that everything was, you know, up and running and good. And they go there, and honestly, this is unsettling. This episode is really the one that is honestly the one that's upset me. I wouldn't say upset. The one that made me uncomfortable the most, because it reminded me a lot of the other analog horrors that are more popular on the internet. Because them walking around this warehouse, I'm totally not a fan of, because you can hear the walkie-talkies cut in and out, and you can't really understand them. But I just hate hearing that doo-doo, doo-doo, and then hear echo. I watching the whole thing, it really made me tense, because I felt like something was about to like either pop out, or they were about to hear like some strange noise over that walkie-talkie. But really, there was nothing paranormal or anything going on there, from what I could tell. I am only doing this on my phone, so I didn't like enhance any images or anything like that. But from what I could tell, it was completely normal. They discovered that most of the warehouse was in terrible condition. Also, while investigating this warehouse, they find documents. They say that they need to return to their rightful owner, which I'm not exactly sure who the rightful owner is. I don't think they told us in the video. Maybe we'll find that out in future episodes, because while I'm making this, the guy said that he's going to be posting one in September, which is this month. So let's hope we find out some more of the story. Anyways, the next and final segment of this video is one where we get introduced to a girl named Kelsey over a tape recording, which I assume is a doctor informing Kelsey that her daughter's condition seems to be internal, but she's having hallucinations and like hearing things that aren't there. So I think that would be internal just by definition. And then while talking, they schedule an appointment, and we learn the daughter's name, Lucy. That's an important name. Make sure you remember that, because she's a big part in this whole thing. And then also, while the video's playing, there's this figure that like comes up like that, as you can see here, and that's just scary. I don't like that. Honestly, I can't really tell what that is, but it looks like a girl, and it looks like a gross girl, and I don't like it. Get it out of my face. What is it doing? Why does it exist? Why is it doing what it's doing? Get it out of my face. Okay, so let's unpack this whole video. So we figured out that Mein Wagner was a model technician that worked on the Thomas the Tank Engine show. And we also learn of Kelsey and Lucy's existence, which Lucy is a big part in this whole thing. But the main question is, who were the owners of those documents that they found in the warehouse? And also, who was the man curled up in that bed, and what was that creature? If I can be honest, that creature looks like some of the human models from the show. That's just what I think. I can't be too sure right now, but that's just my theory. I think that Mein Wagner is the man in that bed, either him or Don Gilliam. That's just a loose theory, because that's really the only two male characters we have at this moment. My main theory is that it is Mein Wagner, and he's being tortured by whatever happened on the show, but which we'll get to after I explain all this. Okay, next video is kind of like a trailer of sorts, and also clues us into how different this world this is taking place in is different from ours, because it shows top 5 best Beatles albums, and not a single one of the albums are real, except maybe one that was like their first album, but they had to change the name to it. So I just thought that was funny, because literally none of them exist. None of these things are real, but it does establish a connection to the Beatles and the Thomas the Tank Engine show, which I also think will be important. They do get mentioned a little more frequently, which is based in real life, because one of the Beatles members, Ringo Starr, he was the narrator for the first 2 seasons of Thomas the Tank Engine. But as some of you know, John Lennon died before the show was made, and then the Beatles weren't together for like 10 years at that point. So maybe they stayed together a little while longer in this world, and maybe they all seem to have tackled the Thomas the Tank Engine project together. Also, like I said, you guys do your due diligence. There we go. But make sure you guys do that, because if you check the description, there's a new YouTube channel there linked. It's called I Upload Content, and it has 5 videos on there, which we'll discuss later. Just a heads up, they're nothing too big. It's really just cool stuff that the guy who made this post, and because the guy really does have talent. Seth here is pretty good at doing what he's doing. I'm not even gonna lie. He's good at making stuff scary. He's good at making models. He's good at making this music. Honestly, props again to this guy for making this, because who thought that a Thomas the Tank Engine analog horror would be any type of kind of scary? Now the next video is trailer 2, which, oh my goodness, my hype train is going. Choo choo, toot toot. It features a really high uptick in quality. It's like there, and these really cool clips. I'm just really invested in this now, honestly. And also at the end, it shows Paul McCartney and John Lennon's heads coming like this. And at the very end, it shows a blonde-headed little girl, and in the thumbnail, it shows a blonde-headed girl, which I can only assume is that Lucy girl. So yeah, we finally get to see what Lucy looks like the first human we know that what they look like. And also it ties in a far deeper connection, like I mentioned earlier, to the Beatles, which I'm really wondering where that's going to go. In this next video, I honestly thought it was an April Fool's joke because it starts off with a shit post. But then it cuts to this guy telling his dad that he's quitting his lame ass job and then he's flying back home because there has to be like a possum or a rat in the air ducts. But the footage that he shows does not sound like a rat or a possum. It sounds far bigger. That's terrifying because he's in a dark studio. Freaking bug. He's in a dark studio and there's like boom, 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 boom in the air ducts. That's horrible. That's horrifying. Get it out of my face. Stop it. That has to be some sort of creature. Get out of there while you still can. Next video is called Clues and is really just a big old riddle because it lists off a whole riddle, says something cryptic, which I will probably put like somewhere around here in this specific area of text because I don't remember it off the top of my head. And then it says a bunch of letters spaced out. And then it says at the end, if you figure out the riddle, you will get the prize. And God bless this person, who I will put the channel name somewhere around here. God bless that person because they cracked the riddle. The letters that were spaced out is I upload content. And then they also figure out the riddle, which is the answer is Thomas and James because it says something about being blue and red, which those two are. So let's talk about what the prize was first. The prize to figuring that out was a link to a Scratch game, which I cannot play because I don't have a functioning computer. But luckily, 2 saints in the comments, God bless you guys, have a great day. They were kind enough to tell us what the Scratch game experience was like. So what happens is there's a little guy, and he's just chilling out there, and then a Thomas Wooden Railway toy pops up right here, and it says, "Take me home." And so you go and you grab the toy, and then you go home through this little black portal, and then it shows a Thomas model, apparently with its face off, with apparently blood around it. That's terrible. That's awful. But also apparently if you press the space bar, you hear I think you hear a demo from Strawberry Fields Forever, and also something called something about the police. Maybe like a police report about something happening because there's blood around the Thomas model. So there has to be, so this links into Thomas and James, I believe. Thomas and James being the answer to this riddle obviously ties them to being a major part of this because they're Thomas characters, and this whole thing's about Thomas the Tank Engine, which obviously they're all going to be big characters. But why specifically those two? Why couldn't it be like Edward or like also James? But why couldn't it have been any other blue character? Why does it have to specifically be Thomas and James? So obviously I'm thinking that they've either been possessed or like there's something going on with those two. And then the game obviously hints at murder being involved or someone dying being involved with the plot of the show. Possibly the little kid, Lucy, that we mentioned earlier, because the Thomas toy and saying "take me home." It seems like something only a child would do. And so that's kind of morbid. That's terrible, honestly. So yeah, leave that to chew on for a little bit. Okay, so after that cool little riddle, which I would have liked to try to crack myself, but hey, you can't always be the first one to the punch. But anyways, we get to our most recent video as of September 1st, as of recording this video, workshop tapes. Now, this video consists of 2 tapes. Tape 1 being what seems to be a courtroom confession with courtroom sketches of a German guy describing a man, being in his workshop and, being interested in his work, being like, "Hey, may I hold this?" And he picks up the drawing, and it is none other than the narrator face. It's the narrator face right here. And also, I'm probably putting the thumbnail. But he picks it. The guy who's confessing to this drew the narrator face. He has to. So this man, the German guy who drew this, has to have some connection to the production of the show. Because why else would he be drawing Thomas the Tank Engine faces? Creepily like that. But then afterwards, after he picks up the piece of paper, he starts referring to the man as it. That's gross. That's scary. That implies something terrible. And then afterwards, he tells about how he feels guilty, and it zooms in on this drawing of a closet. Again, that does not imply great things, because scary things happen in the closet. Closets are scary, guys. And speaking of tape 2, let's talk about tape 2 now. Okay, so tape 2 consists of the Beatles being in purple, some sort of purple light flashing in and out and in and out and in and out, all four of them. And then it cuts to Thomas and James. So this leaves me with the assumption, which I assumed earlier, which I guessed earlier, that the Beatles and Thomas and James have to have something in common. Either that the Beatles were somehow murdered and got possessed or possessed the Thomas and James models, or I don't know, or that's my main theory, that the Beatles are possessing Thomas and James, either two Beatles each, or maybe just two Beatles per engine. But that's my theory so far. But yeah, that's the most recent video of the Where Are You Analog Horror series. So let's get to the summary, and I'll tell you guys all my little theories about it. So let's get to my theories. So we have the characters Mein Wagner, whatever, him, Don Gilliam, Lucy, Kelsey, and the Beatles so far. All the personal people that were involved with the show. Mein Wagner, he was a model technician on the show, and what I assume, he's one of those people that were saying he was haunted by the guilt of him doing something. Mein Wagner has to be important. And my theory is that that man curled up on the bed that seems to be haunted or paranoid, something like that, by whatever creature that pops up, has to be him. Because he's worked on the show, he's a model technician, and there's been two Thomas and James are models, and so that leads me to assume something happened with the models, and Mein Wagner was so distraught with the guilt that he just went crazy. He's being haunted by his guilt and of just mental problems, I assume. Now, Don Gilliam, we still don't know who Don Gilliam is. What I'm assuming is that this is the father of Lucy, and Kelsey is the mother of Lucy, obviously. So we have Don and Kelsey, the parents of Lucy, who I assume is Don Gilliam's daughter, which we can infer from Don Gilliam having a family and needing to be compensated for the death of their child. The only child we've discovered so far is Lucy. So therefore we can infer Don and Kelsey Gilliam have Lucy Gilliam, and Lucy passed away or was murdered somehow, and in relation to the Thomas the Tank Engine show. We have yet to find out if Don Gilliam had anything to do with the production of the show, but hey, maybe we'll find out in the next episode. And then the Beatles. The Beatles are a curious case because they're four people that had to have something, either were narrators or, they had something to do with the show, obviously. And my thing is, we haven't gotten much information on what they did with the show, but I guess we can infer that they were narrators or music people, or they worked on the show. But the imagery with them and Thomas and James still perplexes me. I'm still going with the theory that the Beatles are possessing Thomas and James. Let's lay this all out. Mein Wagner was a model technician. The models sucked, and so this caused tension and stress in the workplace. The Beatles, all four of them, got involved with the show at some point. And let's assume Don Gilliam and his daughter Lucy were also involved with the show. So all these characters we've compiled so far were involved with the production of the Thomas the Tank Engine show. Mein Wagner created some models, had some accident went wrong that led to the death of Lucy and possibly the Beatles, led to something happening to the Beatles. I'm not yet sure. And so Don Gilliam, his family, was not compensated, and the company, Mattel and Child's First Steps, tried to cover it up. But Mein Wagner was so driven with guilt and about what he's done that he goes crazy and is haunted by either his own visions or just ghosts, I suppose. So that's the story that I've laid out here, that I've used my monkey brain power to try and make sense of what this was. I really enjoyed doing this, honestly. I really like when stuff challenges me. I like to use my brain power. But yeah, I really hope to see more of Where Are You? It really sucks that that Seth was having problems with his computer in the past couple months, so episodes have been coming out rather slowly. But the next one, I'm really excited to see it. But maybe when we get another couple episodes out, I'll make another follow-up video to it. But yeah, until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me rambling back and forth. And, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye-bye.